When we go to the cinema these days, we know that there's going to be quite a few films on in the same building. All the latest releases get shown at the same complex. But back in the day, this wasn't the case. If you wanted to see a film, it would only be on at a certain cinema or a certain couple of cinemas in your town or your city. And in a city like Liverpool, with so many cinemas, it was a case of having to travel to see the film that you wanted. If you wanted to see the latest James Bond film, it could be on at the Scala or it could be on at the ABC. So going to your local cinema to see every film wasn't really viable. When I was growing up in the 60s, as a family, we would visit the cinema quite often. My mum and dad used to like going to watch the latest films. But they weren't always on at the Walton Picture House, which I've just shown a photograph of. Sometimes we would have to travel into town. The film that we wanted to see might be on at the Futurist or the Scala or the ABC. But we also used to go to the Abbey Cinema in Wavertree quite often, which was also a trip out. It was a bus ride away. But it was a very nice place to go. Inside was very ornate. Sadly, it's not been a cinema for a long time. But we're going to have a trip out to have a look at what once was the Abbey Cinema in Wavertree. The Abbey Cinema opened in 1939. I believe it was just before the Second World War broke out. It's built in an Art Deco style, and although it's pretty typical of that style, I wouldn't say it's the prettiest of buildings, not from the outside anyway. Inside, I remember it being quite ornate and well decorated. It was certainly very plush when it was at its best. I remember it having a very wide screen called a Cinerama. It was actually advertised. It had a hoarding outside proclaiming it to be the Abbey Cinerama rather than the Abbey Cinema. And basically it projected 3 different films onto 3 screens, and it made the viewing area 3 times bigger than the average cinema screen would be. And I remember coming to see films here in the 60s, Mary Poppins, which my mum dragged us to see, Guns of Navarone, those magnificent men in their flying machines, and quite a few others. Can't quite remember which ones they were, but we were here on a regular basis. The technique of filming blockbuster films in the Cinerama style came to an end in 1971, and I think from then on the Abbey struggled a little bit, and it eventually closed in 1979. The last film it was showing was Towering Inferno, which I think Steve McQueen was in. So from then on, it's been quite a few different things. I think straight after being a cinema, it became a snooker club. I think they only occupied the upstairs though, not the full building. It's been a Summerfield supermarket. Someone said it had been a Lennon's as well, but I don't remember the Lennon's supermarket being there. But more recently it's been a co-op, and they pulled out recently, and the site was bought by German supermarket chain Lidl. Lidl's plan was to demolish the building and put a brand new supermarket on the site, and this caused quite a bit of controversy. A petition was made, a lot of people signed a petition and eventually, very recently, the building was granted Grade 2 listing status. So that's put a bit of a spanner in the works for Lidl, because I would guess that saves the building as it is. I think they're actually pursuing alternatives, but one thing they would possibly have to do is sell the site on and think about moving somewhere else. But then there's the other side of the argument that Wavertree needs a supermarket, because there's nowhere to shop around here, and it's become a little bit of a political football, because Labour councillors say that we're now losing 30 jobs that would have been created here, while other people are saying yes, but we're keeping a building that is of importance to the city. So you always get these two sides in these situations. There's always the ones who say that by pulling something down, something better will happen, and then the other side where you need to keep our heritage. And it's a difficult subject if you look at it rationally, because that's basically what it boils down to. As I said earlier, the Abbey Cinema was built for one purpose, and that was to be a cinema. And it was also built in a particular style of the day, and it was a statement by the architects and the owners that it was going to be very, very plush inside. And that makes it very difficult for it to move on and be something else. Although it has been other things since, it's probably been a compromise, and it's not a compromise that Lidl want to make. Me personally, I think this city has lost a lot of its iconic buildings over the years. So many that you forget them as time goes on. You see a photograph or someone mentions a particular place and you think, oh yeah, I remember that. What? It's not there anymore, is it? I think we sometimes don't appreciate what we've got, and we're quite willing just to say, yeah, pull it down because this is going to happen. 30 jobs, I guess, is important, but so's our heritage. Me personally, I'm glad it's going to live on, and hopefully it becomes something that can be useful to somebody else in the state that it is now, rather than just being pulled down and replaced by a load of glass and cheap cornflakes. Apparently the Abbey was given its Grade 2 listing because it's an important structure and it's in the same location as Picton Clock and the old lockup, which is just over the road. But just around the corner there's the only remaining bow-fronted Georgian shop in Liverpool, and I would say that's pretty important as well. I think it's still in use, I think it's still being used, and I've included it in the photographs at the end, as well as Picton Clock and the old lockup. I'm going to make a video about some of the iconic buildings this city has just lost over the years from World War II, and I'm going to visit some of the locations and show the difference between then and now, and make your own mind up really whether you think these buildings are worth saving or whether they should be pulled down and turned into something else. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll catch up soon.